fans? Anchorpete here, and I am with my favorite horror host, Mr. Danny Torkel. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Can't wait. I'm very excited about our talk tonight.
Yes, and you've got pants on?
I do have pants on, and I got my awesome Cavity Colors Evil Dead 2 shirt because I, unlike some people, was ready for a Sam Raimi movie.
Oh, okay. Yes, those Gen Zers. That's right. And then Mr. Core's hair down there from my other channel, Comic Books Transformed. Are you ready to talk about Sam Raimi and Doctor Strangey?
I am, and this is basically the best I could do for an Evil Dead shirt. But
Nice.
Reading is fun.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, there is an evil book in Doctor Strange, and we could definitely talk about that today.
That's true. It doesn't bite you, though.
Yes. And it kind of gets destroyed kind of easily, too. Spoilers. But anyway, we are here today to talk about the horror that is in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which just came out in theaters. And so there's got to be spoilers for that movie. If you guys have not seen it yet, then please turn this off and come back when you do. But guys, the thing that's been going around on Twitter and social media is how a lot of people didn't realize how scary Doctor Strange was going to be. And some people thought it was like too much like a horror movie or it was too violent. So do you feel like this movie is significantly different from the rest of the MCU movies?
I think so. I think it is a little bit darker. It does kind of edge on horror a little bit more than the others. I think this whole idea for this conversation got started because I was asking you guys about a mutual friend of ours wanted to take her kids to see it who have not really been exposed to horror. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like, I felt fine, and it's still, even in retrospect, feel fine taking my 6-year-old to see this because of what he's seen. And even though he did tell me that it was too scary and he would not want to watch it again anytime soon,
Right.
I still think that, like, depending on the family, there should be some caution at play here.
Okay. What about you, Danny? What do you think?
I mean, I can see where there are obviously horror elements in this movie, but I also don't think that there's any shoehorned horror elements in. I think everything that is horror related in Doctor Strange 2 is plot based. I think that the Darkhold, even the zombie thing was we saw that hinted at in What If, and obviously What If plays a bunch of roles in it with Sinister Strange and other characters who I won't mention. So I don't think it went out of its way to be extra scary. I think that the plot of the movie allowed for Sam Raimi to kind of play a little bit, which is what I think we wanted to see, the three of us and our generation of MCU fans and horror movie and Sam Raimi fans we wanted to see.
Yeah.
So it didn't affect me at all. Charlotte is 11 turning 12, and you guys know she's been watching way scarier stuff. I have the parenting win of having the 11-year-old who stayed till the end credit scene and then hysterically laughed while other people were groaning because she actually got the Bruce Campbell reference at the end. Because my 11-year-old has seen the Evil Dead trilogy. So
Right. I mean, here's the thing. My 11-year-old, because I have an 11-year-old girl, and she's not as exposed to horror movies as your daughter is, but she's pretty much seen Stranger Things, and she's seen The Lost Boys, and she saw Silver Bullet. And I think that if I took her to see this movie, she would not be too scared. I think that she'd be fine. I think she'd probably think it was cooler than some of the other Marvel movies just because of the horror stuff that's in it. It makes me wonder, because the main thing that people are trying to say, I kind of wonder where this whole rumor came from. But they're trying to say that Generation Z, people that are younger than us, were bothered by this movie. And I'm like, don't they play video games all day where they just shoot each other in the head all the time and there's gore?
No, that's millennials.
That's millennials. Okay. But I mean, I go through TikTok and stuff. Man, this sounds like an old man talking here.
So no. Gen Z,
Charlotte
plays watches other people play video games on YouTube and Twitch and all that.
Okay.
play
But
them.
I don't know. I've never played this game, but Charlotte plays Among Us, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's like a horror themed game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it can be. Yeah, but I'm familiar with it. Brandon plays it sort of, even though he really doesn't know exactly what to do. But yeah, it's like it's you're a group of players, and one is like a secret evil player, and you have to kill all the others without them finding out. So there definitely is some horror involved in that.
Yeah, and isn't there like Five Nights at Freddy's, and then there's like
Yep.
the Neighbor or something like that, or Kill My Neighbor, whatever the fuck that game is with the
Oh,
neighbor.
Hello Neighbor.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's probably Kill My Neighbor or whatever I said. but I guess my point is,
I hope your real neighbors aren't watching.
yes, yeah. But I'm like, meanwhile, I'm filming this in my 6-year-old daughter's bedroom, by the way, too. But like, I guess to me, it just didn't seem that scary or that disturbing. It might be because I do this channel with Danny and we talk about horror movies all the time, but I just didn't think it was scary. I thought it just.
Well, let me clarify my initial statement there. I don't personally think it was scary. I think there was one part when one of those demons on Wendigo Mountain popped out. It got me a little bit. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
But like, it's not scary to an adult, I don't think. But I think when you're looking at this in the lens of someone who has just seen other Marvel movies, it is different and it can be considered scary.
Okay. That's a good point. I like that.
Yeah.
So,
there is something definitely unnerving about putting your soul into a dead body version of yourself and having to have this zombie body of yourself be the hero at the end of the movie.
yeah.
While your physical body is trapped in another universe. That is a little unnerving. Again, like Brian said, I don't think anybody our age was walking out of that going, "Oh my God, that was terrifying." I think that maybe our generation's kids might be a little upset because of prior MCU movies and just a different feel, a lot darker tone to a lot of the stuff you saw here.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good segue into what we can talk about next, which is like what is actually scary in this movie, or like what would seem different in this movie than other Marvel movies. So Brian and Danny gave me a whole bunch of good examples. Brian was talking about like the creatures in it just alone. Like you said, that one creature that was in Wondergore Mountain, there's like 4 of them. And you said that was the one time a jump scare got you in the movie, right, Brian?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I'm not too. I can admit it.
Yeah, no, I get it too. Like, I wasn't expecting there to be anything on that mountain, so like it was all shadow, and then all of a sudden those red eyes were right there, and that creature was there. I was like, oh shit, I think I jumped too. But then there's other creatures too. There's Gargantus, and you were saying that's essentially like tentacle horror right there, right?
Yeah, I think that's a valid branch of that kind of oh my God, I can't think of the word.
Like giant monster horror.
No, Kaiju,
like Cthulhu and all that stuff.
Lovecraftian horror.
Lovecraftian horror. Yeah, I think that's got borrowed some elements of that, especially that first creature you see in the very opening scenes, more so than Gargantos.
Yeah, and they never
Is Gargantos the name of the octopus?
Yeah, it's not Shumagorath. They couldn't get the name of Shumagorath, but it looks exactly like it.
Okay, that's what I.
So it's actually like a Submariner villain, like really obscure, but they couldn't because it's technically Shumagorath was from Conan.
Right.
So they don't have the rights to use that.
Right, and I've probably said this in like a previous video, but like Conan stuff a lot of times can be connected to Lovecraft because Howard, what's his first name? I don't know. The guy who made Conan, his last name's Howard. He was friends with Lovecraft, and so like their stories are kind of overlap with each other. There's like a lot of Lovecraft stuff in Conan stories.
Is it Robert E. Howard?
Robert E. Howard. Thank you so much. Jesus, I'm so lucky I have you guys on there. But so there's crazy creatures in this movie, but I think that the main horror comes from the villain, comes from Wanda. And boy, do they like lean into the idea that she's the Scarlet Witch, right? Like Brian, in the comics, she's been possessed by Chthon, who's like the creature that they made the Darkhold from. Like that was the creator of the Darkhold, right? and that's like Chthon is like Cthulhu, right? She's been possessed by that before in the comics, but otherwise they don't really make Wanda like a creepy witch character. They make her more like just an overpowered reality kind of warper. So like we don't really see. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out that from the initial trailers, I thought that was the route they were going to go. I thought that like Chthon was going to be possessing her as a quasi villain, and that different Doctor Strange that ended up being the zombie Doctor Strange that was good was going to be the actual villain somehow. So totally threw me for a loop in that movie. I just wanted to admit that as well.
Yeah. And Brian and I actually talked about this on Comic Books Transformed when we reviewed it, and Danny Cameron came in on the end. But we kind of talked about how like we were not expecting Wanda to be the antagonist. And I said in that review, you guys can check it out on that channel, I said how like that made the movie like so much better. And I think that like really leaning into the scary witch aspect, that's what really sells the movie. If I watch the movie another time, it's because of that aspect. You're gonna say
I just want to mention before, because it feeding off of what you just said, my biggest complaint about every MCU movie after the original Avengers in 2012 has been in the standalone movies, why don't they just call the Avengers? And I love that Doctor Strange in this movie, he has a problem. So the first thing he does is he goes to who he knows is the most powerful Avenger out there for help. And oh shit, that powerful Avenger is the villain.
Yeah.
And to me, I love that little quirk of like, he knows I'm not going to bother with the Hulk or Hawkeye. I'm going to go to the Scarlet Witch, and the most powerful being around. And there's no time afterwards for him to go to the other Avengers. Like the plot just kicks in from that moment. But yeah, like Wanda in this movie, that for me, the scariest moment in this movie, and I've seen the movie twice now, and I get chills both times, is when she begins the dream walk. And what is it? 838 is the other universe.
Yeah.
838 Wanda is walking around in the kitchen, and she senses something. And she walks past a photograph in a frame, and and Wanda in the frame starts to move and stare at her back. And then she looks at the coffee mug, and it's like waves.
Yeah.
And then like she turns, and like you just see the camera hide behind the stairs.
And then twist.
Yeah, that sequence is perfect, like haunted house horror.
Yeah.
In the middle of this like MCU superhero action movie.
Yeah.
That scene to me was the one scene I got like legitimate chills at.
Yeah. That scene reminds me of Drag Me to Hell, right? Because isn't there a scene where the main girl, she's in her kitchen and that Lamia creature kind of shows up by the window? It kind of reminded me of that.
And like the shadow on the floor keeps growing. Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's Sam Raimi, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I actually, that's my favorite kind of scary scene in the movie too, is that sequence. I love the like kind of like it's like a little ocean in her cup. I love that so much. Yeah. Brian, what's another kind of Wanda scene that you really like?
I think just prior to that, when she's attacking Kamar-Taj, and more so when after the she breaks through the shield and everybody's kind of either dead or knocked down, and it's just the three main characters with Doctor Strange, Wong, and America Chavez kind of trying to hide and escape from her, and they're trying to trap her, but they're running away. That was very much like a serial killer hunting the main characters down, and then the scenes where she goes to the mirror and she's looking at the mirror, and then when she finally pulls herself out, looked very much like The Ring or something from The Ring. It was very jarred movement. That got me.
I'll tell you what that reminded me of. That reminded me of the scene in It Chapter 1 where Pennywise comes out of like the box in the Neibolt Street house, and he's all contortioned and with every step, because she comes out of that and she's like sliced up a little bit from going through the glass or the gong or whatever it is. Yeah. And she like contorts back together in like a very Pennywise way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wanda was so good in it. Like I loved Elizabeth Olsen in this movie.
Yeah. it's funny because like it is such a great reference. It like they definitely draw from it. It's kind of interesting, right? Because we're talking about Sam Raimi movies, we're talking about other sources of horror. If you look at the elements themselves, and you don't think this is based on a Marvel comic, you have like a book, an evil book that plays a big part in this movie, which is just like the Necronomicon and Evil Dead, right? And then you have like essentially spirits taking over people, which that's an Evil Dead too, and tons of other movies like The Conjuring, The Exorcist. It's all put within this sort of comic book context. And I think that my favorite kind of thing is when you have the blurring of the genres to where it's like, oh, well, this is kind of 50% horror, this is 50% comic book, right? And it's interesting when you take a horror director and you make them direct something that's not horror. So, like, obviously, my two examples I think of right off the top of my head are like Guillermo del Toro and fucking hell, wow, Peter Jackson. Right, Peter Jackson's early career is horror. Then he makes Lord of the Rings, and there's truly scary moments in all three Lord of the Rings movies. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the ring wraiths, I think are scary. There's like kind of creepy orc shit in the movies. The spider's scary, right? Guillermo del Toro, he did Blade 2, which that's a comic book character. It's a Marvel character, and there's genuinely scary things in Blade 2. And then with these MCU movies, I think the only two times they've had horror directors are with the Doctor Strange movies, right? Because you had Scott Derrickson do the first one, and he did, Exorcism of Emily Rose, and he did Sinister. Right, thank you. And then you have Sam Raimi with this one, right? There hasn't been any other horror directors, right?
I mean, I obviously, unless we're counting Raimi again doing the Spider-Man trilogy, where he started like comic book movies as like a thing that could be successful money making movies.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so it's really only been these.
Wait. Would you count Joss Whedon and Cabin in the Woods?
And he does Buffy.
Okay, but Joss Whedon did not direct Cabin in the Woods, though.
Oh, he did.
Drew Goddard,
wasn't it?
Who? It was Drew Goddard.
Yeah.
Drew Goddard. Oh.
But I mean, Buffy is an entirely horror story.
Yeah. Because I was thinking for the MCU, for the most part, the directors tend to be like comedy directors, right? Like the guys that the Russo brothers actually were from like Community, right? Before they did MCU movies.
Yep.
Well, one guy, I think I mentioned this in our group chat, John Watts. That's the guy's name who did the Spider-Man movies, right? John Watts?
Yeah.
He did a really freaking scary low-budget horror movie called Clown.
Oh.
He had only done, I think, 2 or 3 movies before he got Spider-Man Homecoming. Brian's going to tell us how stupid we are.
James Gunn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I knew we were going to get told how stupid we are. Yeah. So right. Isn't it funny, though, like Guardians of the Galaxy and Doctor Strange are, no pun intended, probably the most out there concepts in the MCU. Like an outer space group of, just create like motley crew brought together. And then Doctor Strange and the mystic arts and all of the, astral projection and all of these, other realms and the Darkhold and evil books. And it just feels like those would feel like the perfect worlds for horror directors to go, where you can just pull a crazy monster like the octopus monster from Doctor Strange and some of the creatures that you see on like Nowhere in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. It just feels like that's like perfect casting for those directors.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because the biggest Marvel movie, or at least one of the biggest Marvel movies, is Infinity War. And when I think about that movie, I always think like that's maybe my favorite Doctor Strange appearance is in that movie. And even though it's directed by these comedy guys, initially the Russo brothers, like I think the shining parts of Infinity War is the Guardian stuff and the Doctor Strange stuff. And like that's the weird kind of horror filmmaker guys that establish those worlds, those characters on film. And so there's something to it, man. I think that people want more from their comic book movie, and I think horror is a good genre to kind of draw from, So, with that being said, what are some other MCU moments that you guys like that aren't just in Doctor Strange that are kind of scary?
I mean, I mentioned it right before we went on. Like you brought up Infinity War. I mean, I know it's depending on your definition of horror, the idea of watching all of your favorite superheroes like fade into dust after the snap, especially Spider-Man and the way he like in almost in tears goes out in Tony's arms.
Yeah.
That it's both sad, but it's also horrific in a way. That was one of the first ones that I went to.
Yeah. That's a really good point because, like, with horror movies, like if that was just a moment in a horror movie, just a straight up horror movie, none of that cosmic shit, and someone just disappeared like that into dust, it would be like a gut punch. It would hurt even more because you wouldn't be thinking, oh well, it's superheroes, they'll probably come back. It'd just be like, holy shit, that person just fucking turned to dust, you know? And
but it was. I feel like most movies would do it where it would be like one person or one character, but this was like character after character after character, like most of them really.
Yeah.
I remember people in the movie theater when Black Panther got dusted, like screaming at the screen, like they couldn't believe what they were like. No, what the no?
Yeah,
like legitimate, like part anger, part like I can't believe what I'm watching, and like that horror at its elements, like draws out your emotions. So if you're screaming at the screen at a character death, chances are it's pretty horrific.
Yeah. And with that whole dust sequence too, did you know that they were actually not going to have that at the end of Infinity War? Infinity War was going to literally end with Thanos snapping, and then it was going to go to credits. I think that's probably the best decision they ever made, was to have that part be on the end there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What else you got?
The snap would have been ambiguous to a more casual fan, I think. So they definitely needed to show that effect.
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead.
I not to get too far away from Doctor Strange, we didn't even mention Wanda outright murdering the Illuminati while her face is covered in blood. And I mentioned that she comes out of the gong contortionist style, which reminded me of It, but I got total Carrie vibes from her in that scene, where especially just her powers are very Carrie-esque. She has like the red like blast. She can blast with the red energy, but she also can just turn her head, and the whole like what mouth, and then Black Bolt's head exploding, and that gave me total Carrie vibes and felt like another like straight out of a horror movie scene.
Yeah.
I also really like the Professor X scene too, because it looks like he's in like his little like mindscape thing, and she shows that she's even like, hey, he can't even stop me here, you know?
Yeah. Even like in that sequence, there's the rubble, and the regular Wanda, or the Wanda from that dimension, is in the rubble, and it's a jump scare there too, right? Because doesn't she kind of like reach out to him?
Yeah.
Danny, do you know why Black Bolt's head blew up like that?
They said that his voice is what gives him his power. So if he can't project his voice, I'm assuming it needed a place to go, and it went out the back of his head.
That's right. Okay. Good. Yeah.
I will admit though, my lack of comics knowledge, the first time I saw it, I thought that was her just blowing his brain out. The second time I saw it, I figured it out, and I had already watched like some behind the scenes stuff. I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. Okay.
Right. Also with that slaughter scene, just like killing Mr. Fantastic. I watched a review of this on Mr. Sunday Movies, which I love. It's like my favorite YouTube channel. And they were saying how Mr. Fantastic wasn't really that smart in this movie. Like, he just kind of goes up to Wanda and he's like, hey, I have kids, and then she's like, good, then they will have at least a mother or something, right? And like, she turns him into spaghetti essentially, and then just makes his head pop. And I mean, that was fucking disturbing as hell too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they expected Mr. Fantastic to do. His big plan was to have Black Bolt talk to her to death.
Yeah.
And that plan kind of went out the window right away. So I don't know what genius plan he was supposed to come up with in that like 30 seconds afterwards, but
Right. Yeah, but I mean, she just slaughtered them all, and even her chasing them through those corridors. I think you mentioned this before, Brian, but that felt like the most like a horror movie with just like the killer coming, like when they go from like where the Illuminati is to like that doorway that took them to that kind of parallel dimension. That whole sequence was real scary too.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, what else you got for like MCU scary moments?
So before we talk about that, we were mentioning Infinity War. I think just watching Thanos rip the mind stone out of Vision's head comes to mind.
Oh yes.
Kind of being a little on the gruesome side, and maybe a little horror related.
Yes.
And,
when Corvus Glaive is trying to take out Vision's stone, that's pretty bad too.
Yeah, early in the movie, yeah. And then I mean, to me, the What If show. We had the whole episode with Marvel Zombies.
Yeah.
And the episode with Sinister Strange, which was one of the better episodes in the show, which I initially didn't like for some reason. I don't know why. And but yeah, it shows him getting involved in all the dark arts and going further and further down that hole with more of that Lovecraftian horror. And I mean, were they implying that the Sinister Strange in this was the exact same one in the What If episode?
I don't think they
right?
are.
Okay.
No. Yeah. But it's funny because like I guess the What If show was not really like people didn't watch that show because I think that zombie episode that you just mentioned, to me, that's the most drastic change in tone from another MCU show or movie that I've ever seen. Where like there's zombies and they're eating each other, and like at one point, like the Wasp becomes full size and blows up Sharon Carter. Like that was truly horrific, and just you didn't really see people talking about it.
Yeah, but they also in that they tried, like I would have loved to have seen that if they would have taken away the humor.
Yeah.
Like there was one there was one scene on the train where Wasp blows up zombie Sharon Carter, right?
Right.
And she's just like, ew, I have Wasp on me or something. Like they didn't do that. Like imagine how much more horrific that would have been.
Right. Yeah, they threw in all the jokes, but like there's sequences where like hordes of zombies take down giant Wasp, and like a lot of beloved characters get taken out, and there's actually a scary Wanda in that too. There's a zombie Wanda too.
Yeah, zombie Wanda in that. There's and there's also you have Black Panther with missing limbs. You have a bodiless Ant-Man, which are all callbacks to the Marvel Zombies comics as well. So yeah, I mean you get some body horror in there too.
Yeah, I'm just surprised. I guess like a lot of people don't watch that show, but I think I enjoyed it. I might be higher than some of the other shows.
I've actually found that the more I talk to people about the MCU shows, the more people I find that have not watched anything beyond WandaVision.
Right.
Or they start the shows, they don't like it after an episode, and they just don't finish it. To me, I'm like, no, I have to finish it. I have to find out what's next.
I think that. So I've not been the biggest fan of a few of the Marvel shows. I honestly, despite the fact that I actually collected the comics when I was younger, I didn't like What If at all. And I just kind of powered through it. And I rewatched the Doctor Strange episode just because I kind of figured I'd need to for Doctor Strange 2. But I think it also has to do with the idea that Netflix has made us so used to streaming that the idea of like maybe if you don't like an episode to then have to wait a week and come back to a show that you didn't like.
Yeah.
Whereas if you watch a 40-50 minute show and you don't particularly love it, but then if you accidentally leave the credits on for 3 seconds and the next episode starts, you're a lot more likely to watch it. I know a lot of people who refuse to watch the MCU shows until they're done and then binge them straight through. Like I have a friend from work who literally just finished Moon Knight because he was waiting for the 6 episodes to finish up, and he didn't want to watch them one at a time.
And then he was disappointed after he binged that. So Brian and I. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, man.
Was your friend the Hulk?
No.
Sorry.
Uh-oh. we got a comment here, guys. Dr. Cringe. Okay. All right, cool. Thanks, Byfur. Anyway, I was gonna say though that Brian and I kind of have a different motto or mindset when it comes to these shows, these streaming shows, because we actually like the week in between, because a lot of times we do live reviews of things when they come out right away. But also we feel like that kind of builds up the discourse about a show and stuff. Like when you binge something, you see it and then it's gone. No one's talking about it within like 2 weeks. But what I was gonna say was that there's still actually more stuff in the MCU that we haven't even covered that's scary, and it's kind of funny because it's Spider-Man centered too, right? Because you guys mentioned this one scene I totally forgot about, the Mysterio scene in what do you call it? Spider-Man Far From Home, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that has the first kind of zombie in it, right?
Yeah. You see, Mysterio is trying to trick Peter, and he shows some of his biggest fears, and one of which was a zombie Tony Stark rising from the grave.
Yeah.
But I think the scariest Spider-Man scene in the MCU probably is a different kind of horror to me, and that's the scene with Michael Keaton talking to Peter in the back of the car on the way to the dance or the prom or whatever the hell it was. And Homecoming. Oh my God, duh. But yeah, like that. I can't think of what movie it kind of inferred, but like it felt, very threatening and very dark, and something I wasn't expecting to come out of that movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like that sort of that like kind of Javier Bardem and No Country for Old Men, kind of like this is just a regular man, but the way he's talking is very scary. Michael Keaton actually played like a sociopath in this one movie from the 80s. I can't remember the fucking name
Pacific
of it.
Heights?
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah, where he was like a real kind of scary guy in that. And then he was also in this movie with Andy Garcia. I think it was called like Dangerous something. And he was like a serial killer in that, but that was horrible too. And you know that one, Danny, so that's good. So, with that being said, I think those are kind of the main scary moments in the MCU. But I think that you can even go further with other Marvel movies and horror. And I think actually the scariest horror moment in a Marvel movie is in Spider-Man 2 with Dr. Octopus. Do you guys agree with that or what?
Yeah, the hospital scene, also directed by Sam Raimi, of course, and you see those kind of those very distinct camera motions and shots that you would see in other Raimi movies. When he first gets when the arms first take over and they just slaughter everybody in the hospital room, you see the blood splatter on the wall and you hear some screams.
There's also an Evil Dead reference in that scene where the one doctor is pinned up against the wall and he's reaching over for the chainsaw, and he gets the chainsaw, and as he gets the chainsaw to like try to saw the robot arm off, the other ones just like turn and stare at him and then like lunge at him, and it's like one of those like Evil Dead shots where you just see like the and that's it, and like the camera goes black. That's a great scene. I even would throw in some of the Goblin stuff in the original Spider-Man.
Yes.
I mean, I know. I'll defend the costume forever. I loved most of. I think that costume is better for a movie than like Purple Face, comics, Green Goblin. But like the way the mask looked, and just the freaking way Willem Dafoe acts, and even like the scenes where he's talking to himself in the mirror, and he has the split personality of Goblin versus Norman Osborn. That stuff is great, and then he brought that back in No Way Home.
Yeah, there's a couple of legitimate jump scares with the Green Goblin in the first Spider-Man movie. There's when he gets the Goblin formula and he's like on the table and you think he like had a heart attack or something, and then he wakes up. That's kind of scary. And then there's a part where he's pretending to be like an old woman in the apartment that's on fire.
Oh, yeah.
We got another comment from Byfur right here. It is the scariest moment is when Tony was dying in a cave in Iron Man 2.
I mean, that kind of goes with the Michael Keaton scene where it's like these real world scary, like real world tense, like there's nothing fun and there's no way to bring humor into a scene where you're captured by terrorists and you're like in a cave and you're forced to build nuclear weapons for, it just so happens that he happens to be Tony Stark and he's able to build an Iron Man suit. But yeah, like there's definitely, I thought about that when you mentioned the Keaton speech in Homecoming, because I was like, there's moments where they're not really horror, but they're just like super tense moments.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make a distinction too. Is like, we've really been talking about more supernatural horror in this whole discussion here, but something like that is like a real world horror, like you just said, and those are totally different worlds. But I think they're absolutely still just as valid because they could actually happen.
Yeah.
And then there's the all-time scariest moment in the MCU is Mickey Rourke's accent in Iron Man 2.
Oh man,
he needs his beard. He wants his beard.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
To get, I don't know if you, and I'm not trying to jump ahead, but I just like, we started this by talking about like this seemingly, there's this weird complaint about Doctor Strange 2 being too scary, and I just I keep thinking about like being a kid and seeing Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, a movie that like helped create the PG-13 rating, and then I think about the movies that came out before that were rated PG.
Yeah.
Jaws was rated PG.
Right.
Poltergeist.
This
Gremlins.
Fucking Poltergeist was rated PG.
That was one of my
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Poltergeist.
Raiders of the Lost Ark ends with the guy's faces melting off, and that was a PG movie. It's and like, it really baffles me that there's like a seemingly like a group of angry parents that are like, you messed up my children with your scary comic book movie.
Well, I think it's about expectations. I think like back then there literally wasn't a classification for it. They changed it to make these standards, and they made it PG-13, meaning that like parental guidance is suggested up to the age of 13. And I believe, all the people that are taking their kids to see this and might be complaining about it, their kids are probably way less than 13. So they probably shouldn't be taken to these movies anyway, according to the ratings, but we just do anyway, because it's like we think in our heads, oh, it's a superhero. How bad could it be?
Right.
But there are a lot of other themes besides horror that, they're much more adult-oriented that kids maybe shouldn't be seeing, but we just do it anyway.
Yeah, it could be Superman 3.
Oh,
yeah.
No, Danny.
I'll never forget that. I saw that when I was a kid. I will never forget it. I saw it on TV. They showed that on TV.
I was just going to say, I never saw Superman 3 in the movie theater. I saw it in my grandmother's living room, and I remember running out of the room because of that scene at the end. Oh.
Yes. If I had about 30 cents for every time I saw a tweet from Danny that either referenced that scene in Superman 3, talks about how Jaws is his favorite movie, or says how he likes The Omen better than The Exorcist, I would like.
That's pretty much my entire Twitter. I talk about pro wrestling. I advertise the videos that we make on the Lassercast, and I talk about my weird horror opinions. So
yes.
That's pretty much it. Aside from that.
But the thing is, every time that you talk about that fear of Superman 3, I 100% understand. That is a truly chilling moment, and it's like just frozen in my mind forever because of that. And it's interesting because you guys were just talking about how, where are the parents? Why are the parents upset about this? And I think it's because there's the established idea of like what a Marvel movie is. There's prior ideas. Like you referenced before, Poltergeist, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Essentially, those are the first types of that particular type of movie. So you could get away with the idea of like, well, what did you expect from this? However, with the MCU movie, there is an expectation of how scary it's going to be, And with Superman, it's kind of funny because I don't remember hearing people complain about that, or it's never referenced about how much outrage that scary robot is in Superman 3. But yet I think that's fucking scarier than anything in Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, well, I mean, there wasn't the internet back then, so I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't as easy to
Point.
get together and complain, or highlight a single complaint and blow it up like the whole world is saying it.
Yeah. So I guess like as we kind of like wrap this up, and also guys, by the way, if you like this interview with Brian and Danny on here, Danny's always putting out content on the Lastercast. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do, because Danny is a very insightful guy and makes awesome videos. And then Brian and I actually have a video coming out tonight where we're going to be talking about Young Justice Phantoms episode 22, and we are also going to be ranking all the MCU movies. So check that out. But before we wrap this all up, you guys want to just kind of throw out some of your favorite gateway horror moments from when you were kids?
Yeah, I mean, the gateway horror are really the moments that scare me the most as a child. So I would say, I mentioned the Poltergeist before, so the entirety of Poltergeist. And then the three scariest moments of my childhood in movie form were Superman 3, the werewolf in the Thriller video, and Large Marge.
Yeah.
That is a classic. That's a fucking classic.
I mean, I promise I won't mention Jaws, but I wrote down in Temple of Doom. I'm 40 years old. I hate bugs. The scene with Willie having to like reach her hand into the bugs, and then the heart ripping out and everything. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in Temple of Doom that got me. E.T. scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
Yes.
E.T. was terrifying. Like, family movie my ass. That movie was definitely the scariest science fiction alien movie of 1982. Oh wait, no, the Thing. I mean, I saw it when I was 8 years old. That came on TV in 1990, and it broke me for like months after. I had to sleep with the light on. I hated clowns to begin with. Brian mentioned Superman 3, Poltergeist, definitely. Silver Bullet was another one. I know you mentioned that because you watched it with Pepper.
Right.
It didn't necessarily scare me, but it was like one of those, like one of the first times I remember seeing something that had Stephen King's name attached to it.
Right.
So there was that, but like even like the movies that weren't horror movies were like the Monster Squad was a movie that had monsters in it, but it's like treated as like a teenage comedy, like in the way that like Stranger Things is, and the Goonies even has a bunch of scary moments throughout. They find all the skeletons. There's a bunch of jump scares as they're going through the underground. The Fratelli family, the dead body in the freezer. There were some scary moments in the Goonies too.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. The points you guys make are really awesome. You kind of name some of the ones I would name. By4 actually threw in some as well. Poltergeist really messed me up for life until this day.
Oh God.
Then they said Evil Dead trilogy, RoboCop, and The Shining. So Evil Dead obviously is just straight up horror. It's not even like gateway horror, right? And The Shining is horror. But RoboCop is a great example because there's some horrific stuff in RoboCop, even though it's like this sci-fi kind of dystopian future. Monkey Brains. I think that was in reference to your
Temple of Doom. That was another thing. Like the whole dinner sequence.
Yeah. And then
I had to. The only Indiana Jones movie I owned was Temple of Doom on VHS, and I watched the movie hundreds of times, and I remember way more of that than either of the other two.
Well, it's funny. My sister ran out of the room screaming at the end of Last Crusade when he drinks from the wrong cup. That scene when I was a kid, that movie, like that scene creeped me out a little bit. But my sister, the first time she saw it, was like, running out of the room.
Yeah.
That and my sister couldn't handle just the music to the X-Files.
Oh, well, yeah, I can understand that. That's really good music. And even like the opening credits for the X-Files are pretty scary too. So for me, just to kind of add to your amazing list that you guys have made, I mean, a lot of them I would agree with. I don't think you guys mentioned Ghostbusters, though, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Right. So Ghostbusters, obviously, there's everyone knows what I'm talking about there, especially the librarian in the very beginning. And then another example I think of always is Christopher Lloyd's Judge Doom in Roger Rabbit.
Of
right?
course.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a great shout out. Yeah.
Yeah. So that pretty much wraps up our little discussion. This is kind of like the usual amount of time we usually talk on the Laster Cast. Danny, what do we have coming up in the next couple weeks?
I can tell you. I can tell you what I have just put up on the channel. I know that Stranger Things is coming back,
Boom.
and I know that we're going to be doing some reviews of the new season when it comes out at the end of May. Charlotte and I just did a season 3 review and recap. I just did a review of the OG 1984 Firestarter, which I watched the other day because they're coming out with a remake tonight. It comes out officially tomorrow, which I'm going to try to see before this wedding I have to go to on Saturday. So Stranger Things. I know we want to do some book reviews coming up.
Yeah. I have coming up. I met Brian Asman when I went to the Ghoulish Book Festival, and I've watched his movie A Haunting in Ravenwood, and I also am going to do a review of his book, Man, Fuck This House. I'm going to put them together in one review.
Amazing.
Then we're hoping to get him on the channel to talk to him. And then, we have some other like potential interviews and stuff with horror writers coming up too. But yeah, Danny also does a review of this HBO Max show called
The Baby.
Yes.
So great little show.
Yeah. But then, like I said before, me and Brian, we cover comic book movies and TV shows on our other channel, Comic Books Transformed. If you liked us today, come check us out tonight at 9:15 Central Time. And that's about it for today. So we'll talk to you guys all soon. Danny, Brian, thank you so much. See you guys later.